Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. Welcome to this channel. My name is Ogbanje Joseph. Please subscribe to this channel, share, like, as well as drop a comment on the comment section. So today we're looking at voting. Now, in a representative democracy, leaders are chosen by the people through voting. Voting, therefore, is a method by which the electorate appoints its representatives into its government. It is a way that an electorate chooses, okay, that the electorate chooses, among several alternatives or candidates that have presented themselves for election. To vote is to decide in an election, and a vote is an expression of an individual's choice in who governs or represents him in the government. Okay, so by voting for or against a candidate in an election, a citizen has invariably made a choice or spoken. Now, voting is a casting of ballot for or against a candidate standing in an election. Okay, there are many processes involved in election. They range from registration of eligible voters to political mobilization by political parties, you know, who actually inform people of their, of what they have in their campaigns, and then we also have voting or balloting proper. Then we have counting of ballots, and eventual announcement and declaration of winners by the umpire. In all this, voting is part of election that constitutes the core of the process. The electoral process is said to be inconclusive when one or more of these processes are not followed. So voting in its real sense is a process of taking a position when an issue or candidates present themselves in an election. So voting denotes when an individual, when a member or persons are enabled, to indicate their agreement or disagreement with some or more, with some prepositions, or their preferences as between two or more proposals or between two or more candidates for some offices. Okay, so it is clear that before an individual votes, there must be options and or divergent alternatives that must compete for his attention. One of the alternatives or candidates must meet the voter's preference before he settles for him or her. Now, in Nigeria, for example, there are many factors that affect the choice of a voter in an election. Now, the voter actually considers the candidates based on their gender, ethnic group, religion, region, etc. It is also necessary to note that voting aggregates an individual's preferences or sentiments for the various alternatives open to him. Okay, so now when voting ends, the majority will always carry the day, and in some elections where absolute majority is the yardstick, once those who voted for a particular candidate are more than 50% or two-thirds majority of the entire voters, including those absent, some candidate is declared winner of that election, while simple majority is the opposite of the absolute majority, in the sense that it only requires majority of the actual voters, that is, with those present, those present to declare a winner in an election. Okay, now let us look at voting system. Now, there are several voting systems that we are going to be talking about. So the first one is secret ballot system. Now, that is SBS. As the name implies, the secret ballot system is one that requires a lot of secretiveness. Okay, this type of voting system is done by voters in anonymity. Under this arrangement, the voter is given a ballot paper to indicate the candidate of his choice in a secretive way and put the ballot into a sealed box, which is emptied later for counting. Now, this type of system is one of the most popular in political systems because it confers integrity and transparency on the electoral process. Now, the advantage of the SBS is that it affords the voter the opportunity of making a sincere choice by forestalling attempts to influence him by intimidation or bribery. It is also a means of achieving the goal of political privacy. So, what is number two? Number two is open ballot system, OBS. This is a voting system that is transparent, that its transparency will be very difficult, to question because of how glaring every inch of the process is. The OBS is largely a mechanistic form of balloting where all eligible voters are expected to queue behind the candidate or his photograph in a polling unit. Thereafter, the electoral officers will do a head count to determine the candidate that will win the election. Eventually, the candidate with the highest number of votes, depending on the electoral system, is declared winner of that election. Okay, so that is the OBS. Now, the next one is actually called the Open Secret Ballot System, OSBS. Now, in some countries, the open secret ballot system is what is in operation because of the complex nature and heterogeneity of their society. The essence of adopting a particular system is to achieve a transparent, credible, free, and fair election. The open secret ballot system, OSBS, is a combination of both open and secret ballot systems. By these OSBS, voters are expected to queue only in a polling booth and get accredited and thereafter cast their ballot secretly. It is done by thumb printing. That is where a voter is expected to thumb print or a ballot paper and drop it in the ballot box. Now, the ballot box will be later emptied for counting by the electoral officers, and eventually the winner will be declared after knowing the candidate with the highest votes. To a large extent, one can confidently say that the OSBS was the system used during the 2011, 2015, 2019, and 2023 elections in Nigeria. Okay, so the next one is voice vote, VV. In many political systems, the voice vote is not a regular practice because it is relatively not reliable. This type of ballot system is most times contested because of the process, which is completely different from the ones we discussed above. So, which are credible, glaring, and transparent. This is not a popular system used, in general elections. Rather, it is used mainly by legislators, mostly in parliaments. It is a process whereby a vote is taken on a topic or motion by responding verbally. This voting system is adopted deliberately by deliberative assemblies, because it is one of the simplest and fastest voting systems. In Nigeria's National Assembly, for instance, voice vote is the voting system used in the adoption of a motion or passing a bill into law. Okay, so voice vote. So voice vote is actually very important. Okay, particularly when it is actually a deliberative assembly. The next one is electronic voting. Now, with the advent of information technology, many countries are gradually adopting e-voting because it is another easiest and quickest voting system that saves people of all the brouhaha associated with the manually inclined types of voting. there are two broad types of e-voting. The one that is physically supervised, by the umpire, where they have voting machines at polling stations, and the second one is the remote e-voting, where voting is performed within voters' sole influence, and it is not physically supervised by the umpire. Now, example of such is voting through the use of one's personal computer, mobile phone, or via the internet. Its advantage is that it cuts across all voting systems and can speed up the actual voting and counting of ballots, and can provide improved accessibility for disabled voters, unlike other forms of voting system. Okay, so those are the things. So we have actually talked about voting, and then the voting systems, or the various types of voting. Okay, so what is important is that whenever your country is actually filing to the polling booths, you should be able to clearly identify the kind of voting system that is actually used in that election, having understood the types of voting system that I talked about. Thank you very much.